They built a power plant on my property, claiming I had plenty to give, but they never expected I'd use their own flawed engineering against them when I flooded their homes with my diverted spring water. How would you react if your neighborhood HOA stole your natural resources right from under your feet? I froze mid-sip of my morning coffee as the sound of machinery broke through the peaceful chirping of birds. Someone was on my property, not just someone, a whole team of people in matching polo shirts and hard hats walking around with measuring tools and clipboards. My peaceful 5 acres with its natural spring had been my sanctuary for 15 years. I'd bought this land specifically because it was outside city limits, with just enough HOA oversight to keep property values stable but not enough to be intrusive, or so I thought. I marched outside, still in my slippers, not bothering to grab a jacket despite the autumn chill. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" A woman with platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe bun turned to face me. She wore an expensive-looking cream pantsuit that seemed impractical for tramping through wet grass, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds. I'm Veronica Miller, the new president of Riverstone Gardens Homeowners Association." She extended a manicured hand, which I pointedly ignored. "You're trespassing on private property," I said, crossing my arms. Veronica's smile tightened. "Actually, we're conducting an authorized survey of community water resources. Your spring has been identified as an untapped asset that could benefit everyone." "Untapped asset? This is my land, my water," I gestured around us. "I never authorized any survey." She pulled out a tablet and showed me a document. "According to Section 12, Paragraph 7 of the HOA charter you signed when purchasing this property, natural resources falling within community bank boundaries may be accessed for projects benefiting the collective membership." I squinted at the fine print I'd clearly overlooked 15 years ago. "This can't be legal." "Oh, it's perfectly legal," Veronica assured me. "Your spring produces approximately 90 gallons per minute. A single household only needs about 30 gallons per day. You have plenty to give." My neighbor Ted Johnson wandered over from his adjacent property, looking confused. "What's going on, Dave?" Before I could answer, Veronica stepped forward. "The HOA is planning an exciting new community improvement project. We're going to harness Mr. Reynolds' spring to create a beautiful water feature in the community park and generate clean electricity with a small hydroelectric system." Ted's eyebrows shot up. "On Dave's land?" "Community resources benefit the community," Veronica replied smoothly. "Your monthly fees will decrease once we're generating our own power." I watched Ted's face change as the financial benefit registered. This was how they'd sell it to everyone. "Lower fees in exchange for stealing my water." "You can't just take," I started, but Veronica cut me off. "We're not taking anything, Mr. Reynolds. The water will still flow through your property. We're simply utilizing an excess resource more efficiently." She gestured to a man with a digital camera who was photographing my spring. "Our engineers estimate we can generate enough power to offset 30% of community electricity costs." I never agreed to this. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "You did, when you signed your HOA agreement," Veronica's tone turned condescending. "We'll send official notification of the project timeline soon. Construction begins next Monday." With that, she turned and walked away, her team falling in line behind her like obedient ducklings. I stood there, fists clenched, as Ted shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Sorry, Dave," he muttered. "But cheaper electric bills would help a lot of folks around here." I spent the rest of the day in a fog, pulling out my original property documents and HOA agreement. The language was there, buried in legal jargon. Natural resources could be utilized for community benefit. But surely they couldn't just build whatever they wanted on my land. That evening, an email arrived with official notice. The Riverstone Gardens Community Enhancement Project would include minimal disruption to my property while installing water diversion equipment, a small reservoir, and hydroelectric turbines. Construction would take approximately 6 weeks. I immediately tried calling the HOA office, but it was after hours. My call to Veronica went straight to voicemail. I contacted 3 different lawyers, all of whom said they'd need to review my documents before advising me. The earliest appointment I could get was 4 days away, after construction was set to begin. Sleep evaded me that night. I tossed and turned, imagining bulldozers tearing up my backyard, the peaceful sound of my spring replaced by humming machinery. This land was more than property to me. It was where I'd scattered my late wife's ashes beneath her favorite magnolia tree. The thought of construction crews trampling through that sacred space made my blood boil. At dawn, I grabbed my phone and started taking photos and videos of my untouched property, the spring in its natural state, the wildlife that depended on it. I needed documentation of the before. While walking the property line, I noticed something odd. Survey stakes had been placed well beyond what I understood to be my spring area. They extended nearly 50 feet into what was definitely my personal garden space. When I called the county assessor's office to verify my property boundaries, the clerk sounded confused. "We show the spring area as designated green space now," she said. "It was rezoned last month." "That's impossible," I protested. "I never received any notification of rezoning." "The notification would have come from your HOA, not our office," she explained. "According to our records, they held the required community meeting and vote 4 weeks ago. I'd received no notice, attended no meeting, participated in no vote." When I asked my immediate neighbors that afternoon, none of them recalled any meeting about rezoning my property either. Ted looked guilty. "I did get something in the mail about a community improvement project, but I figured it was just another garden committee thing." I recycled it without reading the details. 3 other neighbors said the same. They'd received thick envelopes full of HOA paperwork, most of which they discarded unread. Veronica had buried the rezoning notice deliberately, counting on homeowner apathy to push through her plan without resistance. As the sun set on my beloved spring, I watched a family of deer take their evening drink, unaware that their peaceful haven would soon be destroyed. A profound sense of violation washed over me. This wasn't just about water rights, it was about power, manipulation, and the slow erosion of individual autonomy in the face of collective greed. The HOA thought they could steamroll over me because I lived alone, a quiet widower unlikely to cause trouble. They assumed I had plenty to give and wouldn't fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Dawn broke with the jarring beep, beep, beep of construction vehicles backing up. I'd barely slept, having stayed up past midnight organizing my documents and researching property law online. Now, peering through my kitchen window, I counted 3 large trucks, a small bulldozer, and about a dozen workers in fluorescent vests gathering at the edge of my property. My hand shook as I poured coffee into a travel mug. The lawyer wasn't scheduled until tomorrow, but waiting wasn't an option anymore. I threw on a jacket and grabbed my phone, already recording video as I approached the work crew. "Morning," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to speak with your foreman." A burly man with a salt and pepper beard stepped forward. "That'd be me, Rick Davis." He didn't offer his hand. "I'm Dave Reynolds. This is my property, and I have not authorized any construction here." Rick looked uncomfortable. "Sir, we have permits and authorization from the Riverstone Gardens HOA. All the paperwork's in order." "May I see these permits?" I kept recording as he reluctantly handed over a folder. The permits looked official, with county stamps and signatures, but something caught my eye. The property description didn't match my deed. According to these documents, the spring area had been community property all along. "This is incorrect," I said, pointing to the discrepancy. "I have the original deed showing this entire area belongs to me." "You've been given falsified documents." Rick frowned, clearly not wanting to be caught in the middle. "Look, Mr. Reynolds, I just go where they tell me and build what's on the plans. You need to take this up with whoever hired us." "And who exactly hired you?" I demanded. "The HOA directly." "No, sir. We're subcontracted through Milestone Development. Our contact is," he checked his phone, "Veronica Miller." A sleek black SUV pulled up, and speak of the devil, Veronica stepped out, today dressed in tailored black pants and a red blazer that screamed authority. 2 men in suits followed her, one carrying a leather portfolio. Mr. Reynolds, she said with a tight smile, I see you're interfering with scheduled work.
This work is based on fraudulent documents, I replied, still recording. The property description on these permits doesn't match my deed.
The man with the portfolio stepped forward. I'm Jeffrey Winters, legal counsel for Riverstone Gardens HOA.
The documents are in order.
The spring area was always designated as community accessible in your original purchase agreement.
Accessible for recreation, maybe, not for industrial development, I shot back. Veronica sighed theatrically. This is hardly industrial. It's a small-scale renewable energy project that will benefit everyone, including you. Your monthly fees will decrease substantially.
I don't care about the fees. This is my property, and you're planning to build on land where my wife's ashes are scattered. My voice cracked slightly, and I saw Rick, the foreman, wince in sympathy.
Jeffrey cleared his throat.
We were unaware of that sentimental attachment, but the project has been approved and funded.
The construction area can be adjusted to avoid any memorial sites.
The entire property has sentimental value, I insisted. And I have documentation proving this rezoning was done without proper notification to homeowners.
Veronica's eyes narrowed. Every homeowner received the required notices. We followed all legal procedures.
By now, several of my neighbors had wandered over, curious about the commotion. Eleanor Thompson, a retired judge who lived 3 doors down, pushed through to stand beside me. I received no such notice, she stated firmly.
And I read every piece of mail that comes to my house. Veronica's smile became brittle. Perhaps it was lost in delivery. Regardless, the meeting minutes show the vote passed overwhelmingly. What was the count? Eleanor demanded. Jeffrey consulted his notes.
37 in favor, 3 opposed, with the remainder of homeowners abstaining.
Eleanor crossed her arms.
Riverstone Gardens has 128 households.
You're telling me only 40 people voted on a major infrastructure project?
Those who don't participate forfeit their right to complain about the outcome, Veronica replied coldly. I noticed more neighbors gathering, their expressions shifting from curious to concerned as they overheard the conversation.
Ted Johnson pushed forward. I never got a voting ballot, he said. Just some general newsletter about community improvements. I recycled it without reading the details.
Several others nodded in agreement. Murmurs spread through the growing crowd. Veronica's composure slipped momentarily before she plastered on a professional smile.
There seems to be some confusion.
We'll temporarily pause construction while we verify all procedures were followed correctly. She turned to Rick. Your crew can work on the access road preparation today instead. After they walked away for a private discussion, Eleanor pulled me aside. Dave, something's not right here. I've seen this kind of steamrolling before. We need to act quickly. By noon, I'd formed an impromptu neighborhood committee. Eleanor, with her legal background, helped 8 of us draft formal objections to file with both the HOA and county offices. Ted volunteered his garage as our meeting space, guilty about his earlier indifference. I should have paid more attention, he admitted. They're counting on us not reading the fine print. Eleanor had retired a year ago after 20 years on the district court bench. In my experience, she said, when someone rushes a project without proper transparency, they're usually hiding something. Let's find out what Veronica doesn't want us to see. James Patterson, a quiet accountant from down the street, raised his hand. I serve on the HOA Finance Committee. We never approved funding for a hydroelectric project. The only water-related item on our last agenda was routine maintenance for the community pool. My phone rang, the local newspaper returning my call. I'd contacted their tip line about the situation, hoping for some public pressure. The reporter sounded interested, especially when I mentioned the disputed rezoning and the scattered ashes. Just as our meeting wrapped up, a text arrived from an unknown number. Check Milestone Development's other projects and their connections to board members. It was from Rick, the foreman, apparently having second thoughts about his role in this. That evening, a certified letter arrived at my door, a cease and desist order prohibiting me from interfering with community improvements and threatening fines of $500 per day for continued obstruction. I was still staring at the letter when Eleanor called.
Dave, I've been doing some digging. Milestone Development is owned by Thomas Miller. Miller, any relation to our HOA president?
Her husband. And that's not all, she continued. Their company recently filed permits for 3 luxury home developments that would require significant water rights.
I think your spring is a test case for something much bigger.
A chill ran down my spine as pieces clicked into place. This wasn't about community benefits or lower electric bills. This was about proving they could seize private water rights through HOA regulations, a precedent they could use for commercial gain elsewhere. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of machinery again, but this time it was different. A massive drilling rig was being positioned near my spring, far larger than anything needed for the described project. When I approached, armed security guards blocked my path.
Sir, this is now a restricted construction zone. HOA residents aren't permitted beyond this point for safety reasons.
This is my property. I protested. The guard shrugged.
Not according to my instructions, sir.
Through the trees, I spotted Veronica watching with a satisfied smirk. She'd accelerated the timeline, knowing we were organizing resistance. Whatever they were planning to do to my spring, they wanted it done before we could stop them legally. As I retreated to call Eleanor in our newly formed committee, I noticed something alarming. The water level in the spring-fed pond was already dropping, and a thick pipe had been installed overnight, leading toward the community property line.
They weren't waiting for permits or procedures anymore.
They were taking my water right now, counting on legal delays to finish their project before anyone could stop them. What they didn't know was that I had already contacted the State Environmental Protection Office about potential disruption to protected wetlands. They also didn't know that Eleanor had discovered the county commissioner who approved their permits was Veronica's brother-in-law, a clear conflict of interest. But most importantly, they had no idea what else flowed beneath my property or what would happen when they disturbed the delicate underground water system that had existed here for centuries. As drill bits pierced the earth near my home, I felt a rumble that no one else seemed to notice. The spring wasn't just a surface feature, it was connected to something much larger and more powerful. If Veronica thought I had plenty to give, she was about to learn what happens when nature takes back what's hers. I froze in shock as a huge excavator ripped into my backyard, tearing up the willow trees my grandfather had planted. 2 weeks had passed, and the small community water feature had exploded into an industrial nightmare.
My peaceful spring now fed into giant metal pipes. A concrete reservoir, bigger than my house, dominated the landscape. Day and night, turbines hummed and clicked, making it impossible to sleep without earplugs.
"Hey, stop that.
Those trees aren't part of the plan,"
I yelled, rushing toward the operator. The worker shrugged.
"Just following orders from Miss Miller.
She wants this area cleared for the control station."
I pulled out my phone and showed him the official documents.
"Your permit doesn't cover removing these trees. They're protected by the county's heritage plant ordinance."
He turned off the engine.
"Look, I don't want trouble. Let me call my supervisor." While waiting, I snapped photos of the destruction.
This wasn't just about water anymore. They were demolishing my family history. The knot in my stomach tightened as Veronica's black SUV pulled up minutes later.
She stepped out, wearing spotless white shoes that looked ridiculous on a construction site. "Mr. Reynolds, always finding new ways to slow down progress," she sighed dramatically. "Your workers are destroying protected trees outside your PER zone," I stated calmly, though my hands shook with anger.
Veronica barely glanced at the trees. "We need that space. I've already filed for an amended permit. It'll be approved by tomorrow. That's not how permits work, and you know it."
She stepped closer, lowering her voice.
"Let me explain something. My husband plays golf with Judge Williams every Sunday."
"The same Judge Williams who would hear your case if you tried to fight this." Her smile never reached her eyes. "So yes, that is exactly how permits work in Riverstone Gardens. 5 lawyers had already turned down my case too.
Too complicated, they said. The HOA has strong legal standing. I suspected they feared Veronica's connections more than they doubted my case. That evening, I drove 2 hours to meet Ana Jimenez, an attorney from outside our county's influence. They're definitely operating in a gray area, Ana said, spreading my documents across her desk. These signatures, half of them look suspicious. And this clause about natural resource utilization was clearly added after the original charter was approved. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered. So we can stop them? Anna's expression turned serious. It won't be easy. The HOAs wield incredible power, but yes, we can build a solid case around property rights violations and permit irregularity. I nearly hugged her. When can we file? Give me 3 days to prepare the paperwork. In the meantime, document everything, and I mean everything. Every worker on your property, every piece of equipment, every conversation. Energized, I stopped for coffee on my drive home. That's when I spotted them through the cafe window, James and Veronica huddled in deep conversation at a corner table. James, my neighbor and supposed ally who'd promised to help fight the HOA. What was he doing with her? I slipped inside, pretending to study the menu while straining to hear their conversation. Appreciate your cooperation, Veronica was saying. Your HOA fees will reflect our gratitude, James nodded eagerly. Reynolds is planning something with a lawyer from Camden County, some woman named Jimenez. My blood ran cold. James wasn't just failing to help, he was actively working against me. The next day, James approached as I was photographing new excavation work. His friendly smile seemed fake now that I knew the truth. Hey, neighbor, got a minute, he began, hands in pockets. Maybe we should try to compromise with the HOA. The project is almost complete anyway. I struggled to keep my expression neutral. Is that what you think? Well, yeah. Fighting this is costing money. Stress. For what? The spring water was just sitting there and used. I repeated it, it supports an entire ecosystem, keeps my well clean, it waters my garden. James waved dismissively. But now it'll benefit everyone through lower electric bills. Isn't that better? You sold us out, I replied quietly. How much was your integrity worth, James? A discount on HOA fees? His face flushed red. Don't be dramatic. This isn't just about you. The whole community stands to benefit. Except for those of us who lose our property rights in the process, I said, turning away. He walked off, muttering about selfish neighbors loud enough for me to hear. That evening, I spread the water system blueprints across my dining table. Ana had obtained them through a Freedom of Information request. My engineering background was basic, just a few college courses, but enough to understand the fundamentals. Hours passed as I studied the designs. Around midnight, I noticed something odd about the overflow management system. They'd installed a computerized flow control valve that would automatically adjust based on water pressure, but the bypass channel led directly downhill toward Oakwood Drive, where all 7 HOA board members lived. I double-checked my property survey maps against the HOA plans. The engineers had miscalculated the natural water table and groundwater flow. In heavy rain, the system would be under massive pressure. If the main valve failed open rather than closed during high pressure, a common failure mode, the entire system would overflow. I pulled up weather forecasts on my laptop. A major storm system was predicted next week. A phone call to my cousin, who worked at the weather service, confirmed it would be a big one. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Sometimes the only way to fight power is with power, or, in this case, water. Not through sabotage, but by letting nature expose their shoddy engineering. Turning off my lamp, I noticed a car idling outside my house. Through the curtains, I could make out Veronica's silhouette in the driver's seat. Was she watching me? How far would she go to protect her pet project? I closed the blinds tight, unsettled but more determined than ever. This wasn't just about my spring anymore. It was about standing up to bullies who thought their connections put them above the rules. One way or another,
this fight was about to reach its breaking point.
Absolutely not. Anna slammed her legal pad on my kitchen table.
I understand you're frustrated, but if you interfere with their system, even indirectly, you'll destroy our legal case and possibly face criminal charges.
Sunlight streamed through my kitchen window, highlighting the worry lines on Anna's face. Birds that once sang by my spring were noticeably absent, replaced by the constant mechanical hum of turbines. I'm not suggesting sabotage, I explained. Just redirecting rainwater on my own property, which I have every right to do. Anna gathered her papers. Promise me you won't do anything without consulting me first. The lawsuit is our best shot.
I nodded, but as soon as her car disappeared down my driveway, I called Miguel Rodriguez.
We'd met when Hurricane Elaine hit 3 years ago, and I'd helped him salvage his flooded garage workshop. As a hydraulic engineer, he owed me a favor.
It's been a while, Reynolds, Miguel said when he arrived.
Wow, they really did a number on your land.
I spread the blueprints across my patio table, away from windows where anyone might see.
How vulnerable is it to pressure surges during heavy rainfall? Miguel whistled low as he studied the drawings.
Very. They've installed industrial-grade pumps, but connected them to residential-grade pipes.
It's like putting a race car engine in a toy car.
He pointed to specific connections. These joints aren't rated for the pressure they'll face in a serious storm. And this overflow channel is poorly positioned.
What would happen if extra rainwater from my property drained into the spring during a heavy storm? Miguel gave me a knowing look.
Hypothetically speaking, the whole system would struggle. If enough pressure built up at this control junction, the safety valve might fail open instead of closed.
And where would the water go then?
He traced a path downhill, following gravity straight toward these houses here.
I smiled. Exactly. Where the HOA board members live.
For the next 2 days, I worked in my yard, installing what appeared to be ordinary drainage improvements, perfectly legal modifications to my own property. I carefully designed them to channel rainwater from my roof, driveway, and yard directly toward the spring during heavy rain. Meanwhile, Eleanor Thompson had been busy too.
She'd brought a retired environmental inspector to document the damage.
They're violating at least 7 county regulations, Eleanor reported, spreading photos across my living room floor. Eroded soil washing into the creek, oil from their equipment contaminating the water, protected plants destroyed without permits.
Did your inspector friend take official samples? I asked. Eleanor smiled. Better. He called his former colleagues at the Environmental Protection Agency. They're sending someone next week. I nodded. Perfect timing. That evening, I visited Mrs. Yoshida, our neighborhood's oldest resident at 87. She'd lived here longer than anyone and knew the area's weather patterns intimately.
The storm coming this weekend, I asked, accepting the tea she offered, how bad do you think it'll be? Mrs. Yoshida peered through thick glasses at the sky.
Barometric pressures dropping fast. My joints ache something fierce.
It'll be like the flood of '89, maybe worse. She fixed me with a knowing look.
You planning something, aren't you? I smiled. Just preparing for rain. Good, she nodded firmly. Those HOA vultures need a lesson. They tried to make me remove my Japanese maple last year, said it wasn't on their approved plant list.
That tree came from my grandmother's garden in Kyoto.
As I left, Mrs. Yoshida pressed a small object into my hand, an ancient-looking iron key.
For the old drainage tunnels, she whispered. They run under the whole neighborhood, built before the development existed.
The access point is behind the big boulder on your eastern property line. I stared at her in amazement. How did you?
My late husband helped build this neighborhood, she smiled.
Those tunnels can move a lot of water very quickly. She winked.
Just in case your other plans don't create enough pressure. The local news that night confirmed what Mrs. Yoshida's joints already knew, a massive storm system was heading our way. The heaviest rainfall predicted in years. On Thursday, 2 days before the storm, a strange car parked outside my house. Through binoculars, I watched a man taking photos of my drainage work.
One of Veronica's spies, no doubt. Let him look. Everything I'd done was code compliant.
Friday afternoon, as dark clouds gathered on the horizon, Veronica and the HOA board hosted a champagne toast at the newly completed power station on my property. They hadn't invited me, of course, but I could see their celebration from my kitchen window. Veronica raised her glass to progress in community resources properly utilized. Board member Harold Jenkins chimed in, and to steady income from our electricity sales to the power company.
My jaw dropped.
They weren't just taking my water for the community, they were selling the electricity for profit. I quickly photographed their gathering with my telephoto lens, capturing their congratulatory hugs and the banner reading Riverstone Hydro Ventures LLC. That night, rain began falling softly as I made final preparations. I checked the drainage tunnels Mrs. Yoshida had revealed. They were intact but clogged with decades of debris.
Perfect.
They wouldn't drain water away too quickly.
Around midnight, I received an unexpected text from Miguel. V hired me to check system before storm.
Told her design flaws need immediate fixes.
She refused. Said too expensive and unnecessary. I quit and documented everything.
Good luck. I smiled grimly. Another witness for our case. The real downpour began at dawn, sheets of water hammering my roof, filling gutters, and saturating the ground.
My renovated drainage system worked perfectly, channeling cascades toward the spring that fed their power plant.
Through the driving rain, I noticed James watching from his window as water poured down my carefully crafted channels. Our eyes met briefly before he turned away, perhaps finally understanding what was coming. By noon, the storm intensified beyond even the weather service predictions.
Roads became rivers.
The mechanical hum of turbines rose to a high-pitched whine as they struggled against the increasing water pressure.
I put on a raincoat and headed out, supposedly to check on elderly neighbors.
In reality, I wanted a closer look at the HOA system under stress. As I approached the control station, I heard a sharp metallic ping, then another, as connections began failing under pressure.
They were never designed to handle this. A siren began wailing. The emergency overflow alert.
Red warning lights flashed across control panels.
The automated system would now try to relieve pressure by closing the main valve and opening the emergency bypass. But would it work correctly? Miguel had spotted the design flaw.
Pressure surges often caused valves to fail in the opposite direction than intended. If that happened, a tremendous groan of metal under stress answered my question. The main valve had failed open instead of closed, sending the full force of the pressurized water straight down the hill toward Oakwood Drive. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911.
Emergency services, what's your situation?
This is Thomas Reynolds at 1487 Hillside Road.
The HOA's water power plant is failing. Flooding is imminent on Oakwood Drive. People may be in danger.
As I hung up, I noticed Veronica's SUV speeding up the hill toward the control station.
Our vehicles passed, and for a brief moment, our eyes met through rain-streaked windows.
Her expression shifted from confusion to horror as she realized what was happening. I continued downhill, ready to help evacuate residents and witness the culmination of my plan, as nature itself delivered a reckoning that no lawsuit could match.